Hello. Hi. Hello, everyone. Hi. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight for London SaaS. Yes, I will shut up now and introduce the wonderful Holly to tell us her story. Hi, Holly. Thank you. Cheers.
So just to give you a bit more kind of background, I've been working in SaaS businesses in the advertising technology space kind of for the last 5 years. First off at a PMD, which is now known as a Facebook marketing partner, which got acquired by a global programmatic company. And then for the last year at Appsumer, which is a marketing intelligence platform for mobile advertising. So what I wanted to use this session to talk about was just some of kind of the common things we've seen, kind of problems people face with building a SaaS product, kind of mistakes that are made maybe that I've experienced, that I've seen other people experience, and maybe share some thoughts on those. Hopefully you'll feel kind of some form of solidarity with some of them, or you can feel smug that you don't ever make any mistakes and everything's straightforward and perfect. So the first kind of area I want to talk about was keeping aware of the problems you're solving. So making sure you know exactly what it is you're solving and how. So when you start a business, obviously you're really familiar with the problem. You're probably experiencing it every day, or people you know are experiencing it every day, and you're really immersed in that. And the further you get with building a product, kind of the more detached you get from experiencing the actual problem, because you're kind of busy building the technology. So making sure that you're kind of keeping talking to the people who are experiencing that problem every day, keeping up to date with kind of the evolution of the problem, any updates, particularly in things like advertising, it's changing all the time, and also not getting distracted by other problems. I don't know if you guys find in your industries, you go with a solution to one problem and suddenly you're throwing kind of another 5 problems they're experiencing, and they want solutions for all of them. And sometimes you need to be careful to not solve the problems that don't necessarily relate to the one you're solving. Just make sure you're constantly interacting with people experiencing the problem. You don't need to solve every problem, and you're never making assumptions about the problem based on when you experience the problem yourself. Secondly is kind of building flexible, so making sure you're kind of solving every possible version of the problem. So again, an example from advertising is a 3-level structure. You usually got campaigns, ad sets, and then ads, and people come up with kind of all different combinations of that structure. So they can have one campaign with 10,000 ads in, 10,000 campaigns, each with one ad in, or some combination in the middle. So it's kind of making sure you're solving every version of that problem, and helping being ready to onboard anyone with any idea of what the problem is. Also allowing them to, say, create ads through Excel, and do that in any way that might happen. Obviously, you can't solve them all at once. There's still going to be some kind of basic solution that you build on, but being aware of all the different versions of the problem that might come up, and knowing that your users are never going to want to use your platform how you'd like them to. They want to use it in the way that suits them. So solving all possible use cases, not expecting a client to use the system how you want them to. Okay. Third one is build fast, build twice. So I'm sure some of you have probably seen a Venn diagram like this before. Good, fast, or cheap. You can pick 2. Unfortunately, in technology, usually cheap isn't such an easy option. You've probably got a limited amount of resource. And you've got other things that have to happen as well, things like maintenance. And so the only way to throw money at a solution would be to outsource. But if you haven't outsourced development before, then it's usually not that simple. It takes a while to get set up, to find people you're comfortable with. So if we take cheap off, then your trade-off is between good and fast. And there are use cases for both, obviously. Sometimes you need to launch as quickly as possible. But often when you do that, you'll find you need to go back and rebuild what you've already built to be able to iterate on it. You get to the situation, I'm sure everyone's been there, where you've got a great feature and someone's saying, can we just add one extra column and this will be amazing? But in order to add that extra column, you have to basically delete everything and start again because it's so complicated. So yeah, I'm sure everyone's familiar with tech debt. So the more you can be aware up front that you are making that trade-off, if you're going to launch really quickly and build something fast, then it probably isn't going to be your long-term scalable solution. And if you do go for the long-term scalable perfect solution, then you're not going to launch fast. Again, you've got the top two cases there, which are the deliberate ones. You need to ship time. The ones on the right, you can ship and deal with the consequences. You can ship and deal with the consequences. Or you can push something out to market. Move on. And then there's monitoring use. So obviously it's something everyone will know about. Obviously GoSquared are a great platform for monitoring use. But one thing it's also really important to be aware of, I think, is when something's not being used in your platform. So there are lots of features. I'm sure everyone's found that maybe you've built. There's lots of use cases behind it. Clients are really excited for it, but for one reason or another, it just doesn't get that much use. So an example we came across is we built weather strategies a few years ago. So strategies where you could activate or pause campaigns based on the weather. There are lots of exciting use cases for it. Sell ice cream when it's hot. Sell blankets when it's cold. But in reality, it meant things like budgeting became really complicated. Because you didn't know when you'd be spending, and it never gets that hot in England, so you basically didn't spend any money. So you have this great feature, no one's using it, but it's also an awesome sales tool. So what do you do with it? Do you maintain it? Or do you maintain it and keep it as a sales tool? Do you use it for sales and hope that no one actually ever uses it, because it will slowly stop working as other things happen in the system? Or do you completely get rid of it? And again, the middle option's, I think, the one I've seen people go for a lot, where you kind of keep it, you sell it, but you kind of stop maintaining it because no one's using it. And obviously that's really dangerous, because then suddenly someone will turn around and use it, and it will stop working. So it's really good to be aware of what features aren't being used and make sure you're making active decisions what to do with them, and whether you want to keep them on. Requested features aren't always wanted. Know when a feature isn't being used, and make sure maintenance is always an active decision. Cool. And then this one should be really obvious. Don't panic when things go wrong. It's really easy to say. People tend to think they're really calm, and then something happens and all hell breaks loose. But yeah, I mean, the advice is obviously the same as anyone would say. Assess the situation. A lot of times, it might not be your fault. A common one in advertising is if a client has an ad blocker on, a lot of the platform will just stop working because it is ads that they're seeing. So some ad blockers will just block half the things. So a client will email and say, I can't see anything, what's going on? But it's not actually something we can do anything about. So take a step back. Think about how to tackle it, work out when you can fix things, communicate with the client. Don't look to blame people. Again, something everyone likes to do, but doesn't help. You can always do that after. Cool. And as Winston Churchill said, success is going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm. So you can take heed from that. And then the last one is about knowing where you're going. So I think a lot of companies have kind of a long-term vision, which sounds really exciting, but isn't always that kind of tangible. You read or hear people saying things like, we want to be the Uber of dog walking, or the Airbnb of beer. And it's like, that sounds really exciting, but I don't know what you're actually going to do exactly in terms of product features. And it's great to have that long-term vision. And it's also great, you have your short-term plans, which is kind of people coming to you with feedback, ideas, thoughts, changes they want. And so it's really important to have that kind of midterm vision, which is probably between 6 months to 2 years, depending on where your company's at, which is, these are the features we want to have in a year's time. These are the 5 things we want to have in a year, which are really tangible, and you can achieve, and you can then work towards them alongside all the day-to-day distractions, and then you've got a much better measure of success in a year's time. So long-term plans are often vague. Short-term is full of distractions. So set midterm goals. And some great examples of that are these are the mission statements of Facebook, Google, and Elon Musk, which again sound really exciting. Give people the power to share and make the world more open and connected. But if you came into a job and they said, this is your mission, you wouldn't really know what you're doing. Or Elon Musk's is great as well. I want to build a planet powered entirely by the sun and eventually multi-planet habitation. It's great, again, but unless you know what you're doing for the next year or 2 towards that, you're unlikely to get there.
Do you have their midterm goals?
Sorry?
Do you know their midterm goals? So this is the long goal, but how have they broken it down? Do you know?
Not off the top of my head.
I could try.
I mean, Facebook announced theirs last month about kind of a lot about virtual reality and spaces. But and then the last one is pace yourself. So particularly kind of with a SaaS startup, there are so many milestones to meet. New clients, new markets, building new features, getting new funding rounds. So it's really important to kind of make sure you are pacing yourself with that and going at the right pace, particularly with things like entering new markets, which kind of opens you up to new time zones. And if it's doing well, you're going to end up with a 24/7 business, which is great, but means that you are prone to kind of overworking, burnout, things like that. So it's really good to be able to take a step back and try and not overdo it, because it can get really stressful. And lastly, there's no guarantee to where the company's going to end up. Companies kind of pivot so many times on the way, and it can be really exciting. But to kind of say it best, I don't know if anyone's familiar with Mark Cuban's 12 Rules of Startups, but I think the first 2 are particularly good to remember. Don't start a company unless it's an obsession and something you love. And if you have an exit strategy, it's not an obsession. So just enjoy the journey. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Holly. Thank you. Thank you, Holly. That was awesome. Fascinating story.